podcast in the history of the known universe. And Thursdays are always great. We pushed it back a little bit today because we've got super guest AJ Hoffman, who will be joining us very shortly. I'm not even sure we can call him a guest anymore. I think he's kind of the Falconcast family on Thursdays. But AJ's going to join us. We got all kinds of stuff to get to tonight. Been an awesome week of sport. For me last night, of course, it was hockey and the Astros, and getting to watch the Maple Leafs and Austin Matthews with a hat trick and an OT win or shootout win. And then Connor Bedard is going to be worth the price of admission if you guys are into hockey at all. This kid is amazing. And college football last night. Got into that a little bit. It's been a great week. Playoffs are going, and we are live today at the Phoenix on Westheimer. And before you make fun of my neck, I'm just trying to keep my head up during the show here with this brace. So I know AJ's going to get to that. But so we're at the Phoenix on Westheimer. Come on out, have a drink or two. Be here till 5:30 today. Like I said, a little bit late. Monday we will be back at PJ's. So that's pretty much the schedule for the foreseeable future. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Phoenix. It is the best soccer bar in Houston. If you ever come out here on a Saturday, no matter who you support, you're going to have fans of your team there. And it's just a great scene. The food's terrific. And always check on what the daily special is when you come in, because Vu's always cooking up something awesome. And, and they will bring you nice drinks, so salute. Have a little shot here to get started. And it's so great now that the weather's better. There's a terrific dog-friendly patio out back. I bring Kira here all the time on the weekends, and she loves it. And, of course, they all worship on her. So that's the Phoenix on Westheimer. Come check it out. All right, let's jump right into it. Let's go ahead and start with baseball because I feel pretty good about my second futures bet on the Phillies. I should have already cashed that by now, to win the series, and I cashed on the Rangers. But what about the Dodgers, man? Is this just what they are?
Listen, for a team that's had a lot of disappointing postseason results over this last stretch, where they've been, one of the best regular season teams in baseball. This might be the most embarrassing, getting swept out by the Diamondbacks. But you also, when you look at this team, it's not really built for the playoffs. They don't have a good pitching staff. Their best pitcher is a known playoff failure. They decided not to bring Walker Buehler back. If you remember, he would have been nice to have right now. They said, no, we'll play it safe. We'll keep him sidelined till next year, which, probably the best long-term decision, but it sure would have been nice to have him for these playoffs. It's just it's a tough team to understand how they haven't had more success, because everything's in place for them to be very good, and they're just okay. I mean, they're not, they don't suck, but they're just they're not the kind of team that looks like they're set to win a World Series until they get a serious influx of pitching. And boy, I bet they sure wish that they had not sent Trevor Bauer to Japan at this point, because he would have been nice to have in this thing as well. So Dodgers, right. What a crazy ass kicking they took there. Did not see it. I mean, I wouldn't have shocked me for the Diamondbacks to win that series. For them to sweep it's pretty shocking.
Well, it was almost like they looked at their past playoff failures and said, "Hold my beer, I can top all of those." And especially Clayton Kershaw. That was just, I don't even know what you call that. And ever since then, they were just done.
Yeah, it's when your ace goes out and gives up 40 runs or whatever it was, it's how do you come back from that? I don't really know. And in this wild card thing, with the wild card set up the way it is, you're the one who has the advantage of having your rotation set, and the other team has to just kind of work around it. They only have one Zach Gallen, and they didn't get to choose when he pitched. They just had to roll with the punches, and whenever he came up, whenever he was ready, they could throw him. The Dodgers set things up the best way they could. But again, it just boils down to they didn't have enough pitching to compete in the playoffs.
Yeah, and moving on to the American League, I love this Astros-Rangers matchup, mainly because it's going to make Astros Twitter's head explode.
Oh man.
I can't wait to see the whining and crying from that. It'll be funny as hell. But I think it's going to be a pretty good series. And I think the Rangers, the Orioles were clearly the better team going in. It's just, I think a lot of it was the lack of experience. We talked about this last week. I think they remind me a lot of those 2015 Astros. I think they're a better team than that team was. But I just didn't feel like they were ready for the postseason. And the Rangers have done this all year. They're streaky. They get hot. They'll win 6-7 games in a row, and then they can turn into bad Ranger and lose 6 or 7 in a row. Kind of like the Astros have with Fromber, right? It's good Fromber or bad Fromber.
Yeah, and the Rangers are another team that I wasn't sure if they were going to have enough pitching to get them through this thing. But Nathan Eovaldi's been phenomenal. Montgomery's been good enough. So even without Scherzer or DeGrom or whatever, insert superstar here, they've done a pretty good job. So they're a dangerous team because they can bang the ball. And the Astros pitching has been kind of hit or miss. Like you feel comfortable when Justin Verlander pitches, and everything else feels like maybe good Fromber shows up, maybe he doesn't, maybe good Christian Javier or is like you've got guys who you thought you were going to be counting on who are just gone and vanished, injured or whatever. So it's a lot different look than what you thought it was going to be coming into the season. But they're going to have to try to piece this thing together. And if the bats stay, I think this boils down to whose bats are hot in this series. If the Astros bats can blow up, then I think that they'll overcome the pitching flaws. And I think it's the same case for the Rangers.
Yeah, and it really is going to come down to consistency because that's I think both these teams have lacked that. And so I could see this being a short series if one of these teams gets hot because that's kind of been the MO all year for them. And I think the Astros, from a pitching standpoint, you get spoiled because last year's playoffs was perfection, and that doesn't happen. And Javier and Fromber, you can tell in 3 innings which one you're getting, the good one or the bad one. And if they get through the first 3 innings unscathed, you're probably fine. And but it is one of those things where an Astros fan is going to lose their mind, but nothing is ever perfect, and nothing's ever going to be like it was last year in that pitching run they went on. So let's anything else on the? I kind of think it's going to be Phillies and a Texas team would be my prediction. I think Phillies win tonight and then win the next series.
I think that's a safe prediction. I tend to think the same thing. I think it's Phillies versus. I think the Astros win this series. I think it's close. I think it's closer than Astros fan wants it to be. But I do think the Astros can pull through. At the end of the day, they've got a Justin Verlander and nobody else does.
Right. All right. Welcome in Flip, Chuck D, BC, Virginia Buttonweed, Roger's here. Love Roger. Bear Brothers here. Fleece here. Jared Taylor's here. Get a couple more. Crystal's here. And Lamont's in the house. Welcome, Lamont. And he asked a question here why our fan base is so stupid with this. We want Houston bleep. Rangers are doing it now.
Everybody wants to be the one to finally knock off the big fat cheaters. That's the big. That's what they want to be. Oh, at least we got them. You guys couldn't get them. We got them. Like we did it because they think they're doing the whole league a favor in these situations. So it's like, oh, look what we did. We beat the big cheaters. We're the best, and they think that Twins fans and Yankees fans and Dodgers fans and everybody will be like, oh yeah, go Rangers. When the reality is nobody gives a shit about the Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's Rangers Diamondbacks, the ratings might be so small you need a microscope.
It would be tough.
Yeah, and especially in the heart of football season here where we are. And so let's turn to that.
But for ratings purposes, the Astros are good for business because everyone does want to watch the Astros lose. They're all every team who's not the Astros is hoping the Astros lose. And that's why the Rangers are putting on that, we want the Astros shirt right now because that's what they're trying to be, those guys.
Yeah, and I actually like that. I've never been a part of a team that was just universally hated. Except maybe back in the day when I was at Lamarck and we were winning all the state titles, we were pretty well hated. But nothing like this. I enjoy it. It's kind of fun. It's like must be what it's like to be a Yankees fan. Everybody roots against you unless you're a Yankee fan.
I think the closest thing, and I mean, me, I'm not a fan, like a hardcore fan of many things. But like when James Harden was with the Rockets, I felt like no one liked the Rockets except people in Houston. And maybe that was just my perception because I was in it. But like I've always just thought James Harden, and I wasn't a fan of that team even, but I felt like James Harden was just such an unlikable character that everybody else was wishing that he would fail as well. But again, that could just be my perception from the inside. I know now that I'm outside the Houston bubble that's certainly the case with the Astros. Everybody wants to see them fail.
Yeah, I think both you and I just hated the way James Harden played, and we hated
It was
the Rockets.
terrible.
I think there were people outside that actually liked the guy, but now
Weirdos.
now that they've seen what he really is, yeah, they're weirdos. So, all right, let's. I want to get to college football, and before we look ahead, a couple of really. I mean, I can't wait for Oregon, Washington, but
Beautiful.
talk a little bit about the Longhorns and Sooners. My thought was I thought the Longhorns were the better team. I think they're the better team. They made some key mistakes, and Oklahoma's good enough that you can't have those turnovers. You can't have 4 shots from the 1 yard line and not get in the end zone. And I think when you added all that up, that wound up being the difference.
I think those two things you mentioned, the first and goal that they didn't convert on, the turnovers, those are key things. But I also think like at the end of the game, like playing for a field goal and going slow was a huge mistake. They should have tried to never let Oklahoma see the ball again. And instead of like kind of going for it and going for the gusto, it was just an odd decision. I thought that was the worst game that Sarkisian's coached since he's been at Texas, and it may have cost him. The good thing for Texas is because they have that Alabama win in their pocket, as long as they win the rest of their games, they're going to the playoff. A one-loss Texas team would get to the playoff. Of course, they'll have to go through Oklahoma again in Arlington, presumably. But because they have that non-conference win over Alabama, like there's no doubt in my mind that a one-loss Texas gets in. Whereas Oklahoma, I don't think if Oklahoma loses another game, like if let's say Oklahoma loses to Kansas State or Oklahoma State, and then they beat Texas in the Big 12 championship, I don't think Oklahoma gets to the playoff with one loss because they didn't have that elite non-conference win. And even then, beating Texas twice, I don't think that'll be enough to put them in unless there's just a bunch of chaos everywhere else, because I really do think as good as Texas and Oklahoma have been this year, the rest of the Big 12 being down is a scary thing. You know, the SEC is going to get at least one team. You know, the Big 10 is going to get at least one team. The ACC looks pretty good. The Pac-12 looks pretty good. So it's going to take Texas is the only team in the Big 12 right now who can get in with one loss, I think. Oklahoma would have to finish the season unbeaten to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think so much is going to depend on what happens with the Pac-12 and do these teams eat each other. And it starts this week with Oregon, Washington, which, I still have Washington is one of my contenders for best team in the country. I know that the Arizona loss doesn't look as bad considering what Arizona did against USC, and some of us were up until well past even Vegas time watching that game. And the only thing I'll say is we talk about USC's defense is going to be what gets them beat, but they actually played really well the second part of that game against an Arizona team that looks like it's found itself with this quarterback. So I think I don't know what to make of them yet.
I think USC is an absolute fraud. I think USC by the end of it is going to have multiple losses on their schedule. Like we can say Arizona looks like they found themselves with a quarterback. No, I think their quarterback just played against USC's defense. Like I really believe that's it. And USC, what I've seen with them defensively is they're not making an effort to change anything on defense. It's the same stuff from week 1 to now. Because their goal the whole time is to just outscore everyone. And eventually you're going to run into a team that, whether it be Oregon or Washington or Oregon State or UCLA, who can play a little bit of defense and can keep pace with you scoring. And I don't see it as sustainable for USC. Like I don't even think they're one of the 10 best teams in the country. I think they're one of the most overrated teams going right now.
I think that's fair, and you're also going to have games like Caleb Williams had in the first half the other night where he's 4 of 10, and you do that, you're not beating anybody. But I will say this about Arizona. They hung in there with Washington the week before when that kid played quarterback. So I'm going to give them more credit for that than the USC game, which they easily could have knocked them off, and we wouldn't even be talking about them. All right,
and by the way, fuck, you're a double digit dog. You go for 2 at the end of that game. Don't play for overtime. Like, no one expected you to win. Were they 21-point dogs?
Yeah.
No one expected you to win the game. Go for it. And if you lose that way, no one's going to go, oh, I can't believe Jed Fish went for 2 and it cost him the game. No, you were never supposed to win it. And Arizona it's not like they're playing for a Pac-12 championship. Like, this was their big chance.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, when it's the third overtime and you get your chance to run your 2-point conversion play and it's like a toss sweep.
Oh, God.
That's what you came up with? Are you crazy?
Run away from the line of scrimmage. If that's what you were going to do on your 2-point try, then never mind. But
exactly.
I'm a big believer when you're the underdog and the other team is always going to be their butts are going to be tight in that situation. You go for 2 and, win or lose, you take 1 play to win the game as opposed to, okay, let's go to the next overtime. Let's go to the next overtime.
And particularly when not like if you're a 4-point dog, it's one thing. You're a 21-point dog on the road. Like, no one expected you to be even close in this game. Shoot your shot, man. That's a huge coaching mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get to Oregon, Washington. I am as excited about this game as I was Oklahoma, Texas last week. I think these are 2 teams that I like Washington better. I like that they're at home, but Oregon and what Bo Nix has become over the last couple of years with experience, he's just gotten better. He's as good as anybody right now.
This game is arguably like the Heisman Trophy game. The winner of this game is the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion. Because, like I said, I expect Caleb Williams to lose a couple games, and people are like, for him to win a second trophy. I said this preseason as well. Like, he has to be above reproach, and I think that means like basically going undefeated or maybe having 1 loss and just like blowing away everybody else's numbers. I don't think that's going to happen. Penix and Bo Nix both still have a chance to be unbeaten. Both have a chance to make the playoffs still. I do like Washington at head coach a little more. I like them at quarterback a little bit more. They're getting back Jalen McMillan, who's missed half the season. He's their best wide receiver. Washington won this game at Autzen last season, and Penix outplayed Nix in that game. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do it here at home now. And both these teams should have some offensive success, though. And while, I think that both these teams are going to put up points. Right now, in the power ratings, I've got these teams about equal. So -3 makes some sense for me. Oregon's schedule is a little iffy. I think that's something to worry about. But this is the game of the week. This is basically for a playoff spot, maybe for a Heisman. This is a big game.
Yeah, I'm like you. I have them almost even. I have Washington slightly better just because I like their defense better. But it's almost like Texas, Oklahoma, though. It's just going to come down to who makes a couple mistakes, and we'll see how that one goes. Any other games in college? I'll talk about tonight's very briefly.
Your boys, here we go.
Yes, Houston hosting West Virginia. I've got my UH gear on, and I'm not liking their chances right now. I mean, I just think that, and I know that Dana's lost the fan base, and that doesn't matter. But if you start losing the players, because they talk, they hear the fans, they have family that are fans. I think you could easily start losing the players, and this thing could go south in a hurry.
I think that Dana finishes out the season and then is probably gone. The thing that's most disappointing about Houston football right now is they are like all those years they were in G5 and we were like, wow, they have Power 5 talent. Now they're in the Power 5 and they don't have Power 5 talent.
Right.
Like this is not a good roster. They don't have the players to compete with these Big 12 teams, which is, I mean, it's a shame that it took them this long to get to the Big 12 and now they're not ready.
Right.
But I don't see this. I don't see it getting fixed anytime soon. Like this it doesn't feel like there's something that they can do and just flip a switch. I don't really see how that works. So to me, this is UH can't stop the run to save their lives. and West Virginia is running the ball really well right now. I feel like this is almost a smash spot for West Virginia. I think they've got a lot of advantage. And the other thing, West Virginia has been one of the top 5 pass defenses in the country. If UH can't pass, what do? Because they can't run the ball. So I don't see much of a path for Houston here.
Yeah, and I think the big problem is they do have some skill position wide receivers who are really good. The problem is in the trenches they do not match up with any team in the Big 12 right now, and you had to know that going in, right? That you've got to build up. They've got an NFL offensive lineman, but the rest of those guys are you and me. And they're just not going to win like that. And I'm disappointed because Dana did a lot of stuff to try to have this team ready, including redshirt an entire season and completely tank.
Which was crazy at the time, and it looks so dumb now. I mean,
it got him a 12-win season, but that was the year Cincinnati just happened to be better. And other than that, though, I mean, last year was a disappointment. I mean, especially by the standards at UH, where they say we fire coaches for 8-win seasons. Well, you just had an 8-win season. You ain't having one this year.
No, they'd love to have an 8-win season now. And I ended up playing the over win total for UH, and that's a dead ticket. Like there's no way this team is going to be a bowl eligible team.
Yeah, I had that one too, and the Rice game screwed that. I mean, That was it. Once you lose that game, I think they're going to, they'll win a couple coming home, but I don't know if they're winning 3.
And what's funny is at the time I was like, well, maybe Rice is good. And maybe it's not as bad of a loss as I thought. But now I've seen a couple more Rice games, and it's like, no, that's just UH is just dreadful. Like this is one of the worst teams that they've had in a long time, and it's just really bad timing. Like I don't know if this team would win the American Conference. I don't know if they'd compete in the American Conference with this roster.
No, I think you're right, because there's a couple of pretty good teams in that conference that they would beat them.
They'd be bowl eligible. But they're not winning that conference. They're not beating Tulane. There's no way they're beating the top level G5 teams this year. They're just not that good.
Another game I'm interested in is Miami, North Carolina, and I don't know what the hell Miami was thinking at the end of that game. I'm sure you guys talked about it a lot this week.
This is what Mario Cristobal is, and thinking there were people who were like, "This is unprecedented for a coach to do this," and I was like, no, Mario Cristobal did this exact same thing when he was at Oregon against Stanford and cost them a game. And so you would think of all the guys who would say, oh, I know better than that, it would be him. It's unbelievable. So it was incredible to watch. I felt bad, like all those players crying. It's like this was their undefeated season. Things were looking good. Yeah. But the truth of it is there's a lot of problems with that team. And even if they won that game, let's say they did take that knee, I would be concerned that they were even in a ball game with Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is not good at all. And the idea that they were in this game is concerning to me. Now, if you're talking about making a mistake that could cost you your team, cost you the support of your team, that was it. Now they've got to go against this North Carolina team, which, by the way, defensively, which we thought was going to be their big problem, their big flaw, North Carolina is pretty good on defense. We know what they are on offense. Drake May's now got Tez Walker back. I think the offense is going to keep getting better. But UNC might be the best team in the country that no one's talking about. But the Miami game, 5 turnovers, 3 picks for Van Dyke against Georgia Tech. Miami's got Clemson on deck next week. This feels like a really good spot for the Tar Heels, who I think are a buy-on team anyway. So I like North Carolina this week. I think Miami, that's almost a dream-crushing, that's the end of your season, basically.
Yeah, and listen, this North Carolina team is way better than I thought they would be. You mentioned
for sure.
Defense. And, shout out to Mac Brown. We both love Mac.
And Gene Chizik, who I thought it was it's Mac hiring his buddy. Gene Chizik sucks, but you know what? Gene Chizik's done a really good job this year, so I give him credit. Credit where it's due.
One other game that you and I might be the only people listening that are interested in this, but UCLA Oregon State's a hell of a game this week.
No, that's a very good game. UCLA coming off that win over Washington State, which did not surprise me. I think it surprised a lot of people, but I thought it was a good spot for them. But here's the problem: UCLA's got a freshman quarterback going on the road. We saw this against Utah. He went on the road and he looked like a completely different guy. And Dante Moore's a good player, but when he was in that tough spot at Utah, he looked like he'd never touched a football. Oregon State and Utah have a lot in common. They play good defense. They're particularly going to take away the run and make that freshman quarterback beat them. There's rain in the forecast in Corvallis, which I also think benefits the home team. Oregon State has a lot more physicality, and lost in the shuffle last week was because they played Cal, who isn't a very good team. I was like one of the few people, I think, on Oregon State. Everybody was like wanting to back Cal. And I was on, like, the line moved way against me on that thing. DJ Uiagalelei played maybe his best game of the season last week. He was making NFL throws, and it's like, oh, that's the guy who Clemson thought they were going to get.
Yeah.
And if that guy shows up against UCLA, man, I think they're in trouble. I think Oregon State is quietly one of the teams to beat in the Pac-12. They are the most physical team in the Pac-12. They will run the ball down your throat. I like Oregon State quite a bit this weekend.
And that is a tough atmosphere to go up there and play. It really is a great.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and actually, I kind of like the kid that Cal trotted out at quarterback last week. I think he's got some potential, but they were no match. And that's Oregon State. I think they're going to look back on that Washington State game at some point and just say, man, that could have gone either way. One or two things go our way, we win that game. But I don't think people pay enough attention to them because I think they are that good.
Yep.
Any other college football that strikes you this week that you want to share with the people?
Yeah, I'll give out a best bet because it's a game that I just don't understand the line on. Miami of Ohio is playing Western Michigan, and it's Miami of Ohio's minus 8.5 on the road. And again, if you don't follow MAC football, that's fine. You're probably smart. But Miami's been dominant in MAC play so far, particularly their defense. They held Kent State and Bowling Green, their first two MAC opponents, to a combined 3 points. That's going to keep you in every game in the MAC. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the conference in Brett Gabbert. Yep, Blaine Gabbert's little brother. He's thrown for over 1,200 yards. He's got a 12-3 touchdown to interception ratio. Western Michigan played with a third-string quarterback last week named Hayden Wolf. They're missing two starting offensive linemen. They're missing their starting running back, Jalen Buckley, and they have allowed over 40 points in each of their 4 losses. Their defense is trash. Their only FBS win came against Ball State, who's an absolute bottom feeder in the conference. Right. And Miami is anything but that. Redhawks, they already went on the road and got a win over a Power 5 team in Cincinnati. The road trip's not going to bother them. This is a really good Miami of Ohio team and a really bad Western Michigan team. Anything under 10 points, I think Miami of Ohio is a really good bet.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And, I'm still getting ready. I'm still getting ready for Tuesday night in action because that's where I do all my damage. But, man, it's so cool having those Conference USA games during the week now.
It is cool, man.
Like 50 days of football. I love it.
The games are shit, but at least it's football. Like it's fun, it's something. So
you know what? That Jacksonville State Liberty game. I mean, those are probably the two best teams in the conference. That wasn't a bad one. I mean, it turned out not to be as entertaining as I'd hoped, but I mean, that was at least decent football. I'm not going to say good football, but I'll go with decent.
Let me give out one more thing, and there's no number on this, so I can't tell you what to play it at. But I want you guys, anybody who plays early lines, I want you to be ready on Sunday morning. Or Sunday, I don't know what time it comes out there, Sunday afternoon, I guess, in Texas. But be ready for Penn State and Ohio State's line to come out.
Yeah.
Penn State is better than Ohio State. This Ohio State team, they are the softest ass team. For all the talent that they have, they can't run the football because they are just soft up front. Penn State is going to bitch slap that team. So I would imagine will get Ohio State as a slight favorite.
Yeah.
I think that's the wrong side. Penn State is going to win that game outright, in my opinion. So when that line comes, you want to jump on it early. I think there's going to be a lot of sharp money on Penn State. So try to get to it as early as you can. But I think Penn State I think they bully this Ohio State team. To me, this season, Penn State and Michigan are at the top of the Big Ten, and Ohio State's in the seat that usually Penn State's in, like trying to work up into that conversation. From what I've seen of Ohio State, they are not on the level of Penn State and Michigan this year.
No, and I think Michigan defensively is just sick. So I can't wait for that game. But as far as Ohio State goes, and I watch way too much Penn State football because, as you know, Katie goes there and she's become a big fan, and she went to the whiteout game, and I see this team, and those cornerbacks are going to eat Ohio State's receivers alive, except for, Marvin Harrison's going to get his. But they've got the guys to match up with him back there. And this kid at quarterback's not going to be able to create. He's not C.J. Stroud. He's not going to be able to create plays for those guys. So
Right.
They're going to have to do it on their own. And they'll get some because that's what they do. But I think, and plus, I just think in the trenches, Penn State's better.
I agree.
And again, and that's the big difference. So
and I think they might have a better coach.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. I mean, I don't know what to think of Franklin. I think he's a very good coach.
Oh, he's a prick, but he's very good at what he does. I mean, and when you think about it,
prick. Let's throw that in there too.
Like when you think about it, most of the guys who are really elite coaches they're assholes. Like Bill Belichick is an asshole. Nick Saban is an asshole. Like Harbaugh is an asshole.
Yeah.
There's very few guys who are likable characters who are good head coaches. Like you mentioned Mac Brown earlier, who's like the nicest guy in the world.
Oh.
But it's a rare thing. It really is for a really elite head coach to be a likable person. I guess in the NFL, it's Andy Reid is probably the closest thing to it. But yeah, James Franklin he's exactly what he looks like. But he's very good at what he does.
It's funny because you mentioned Mac. There's just so few people that have that kind of Southern charm they can turn on. And it works great in recruiting, and it works great with the alumni. And you almost have to be an asshole to be good at this, right?
Like, and then there's guys who they fake like they're nice guys, but they're asshole. Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney is 100% an asshole, but he does the whole, I'm a good old boy, Jesus, and but
Jesus loves me, sir.
On the inside, that guy is a piece of work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely think that. And Tom Herman was the same way. Tom Herman said, I'm going to kiss all my players, but boy, he was a world-class
asshole. Yep.
Oh, and I mean, I knew him and liked him, but I knew what he was too.
Yep.
You go into that. All right, I got just a quick moment here for one of my favorite people, Andrew Lanham Industries. Please check them out if you're on Lake Livingston. They provide all kinds of service for, if you've got a vacation home, if you live there, man, they take care of everything. Cleaning, lawn care, laundry, maintenance, inventory management, property management, all that's available. Veteran owned and operated, which you and AJ and I have always been big on. And the other thing is, when I go to find my place, they're going to help me find the right place. The, right location, decor and themes, price points, everything. Highly trained and dedicated crew, 5-star ratings from everybody. So please check them out, 936-581-6166 or 346-773-9577, or just go online to atlantamindustries.com. Or better yet, if you can't remember any of that, you can always hit me up, right? Just go to the Falconcast at yahoo.com, send me an email, or send it to my old Faour975 at Gmail. Either way, I'll put you in touch with them. You'll be happy with everything they do. If you've already got a place there and you need some of these services, hit them up. All right, let's get to the NFL. Shall we start with tonight's game? Which, boy, our survivor pool, we're doing pretty well. We've had a lot of people get knocked out. And my first thought was, maybe we should do Kansas City, but I think we should save them. And I want to find a path for Denver to have a chance in this game. I got to be honest, I just don't see it. Give me a path.
For them to win or to cover?
Both.
To cover is reasonable. To win is unreasonable in my opinion. I mean, there's bad weather, but I think bad weather. Kansas City's more equipped to deal with bad weather because Patrick Mahomes has the kind of arm strength that can cut through that wind. I don't know if Russell Wilson does anymore. Patrick Mahomes has never lost a football game to the Broncos. 11-0 straight up against Denver.
Yeah, that's so bizarre. But he just missed Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And and that was the last time they beat him, right? When Peyton was still
Yep.
there.
But 11-0, like everybody loses to the crummy teams in their division at some point. No, not Patrick Mahomes.
Nah.
But the 2 games they played last year, the Broncos covered both. The Chiefs are not good at covering big numbers. They're just not. They don't play for margin. They're not like the Bills. They're not like the Dolphins. They're not one of these teams that keeps the pedal on the gas. Like they play to win the game. And you saw the best example of it the other day. I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, where Patrick Mahomes slid down at the 1.
Yeah,
most teams take that in, and they
cover,
try and pile on and cover. But that's not what the Chiefs do. It's a very smart football team. They're not concerned about. They're not James Franklin. They don't pay attention to what the point spread is. They're not out trying to cover for their alum. But I think there is a path to the Broncos covering this game. But as far as winning, I just don't see it. I think even with Kelsey banged up, which he is, I still can't picture a world where Patrick Mahomes loses, especially to a defense that is this bad. This is the worst defense in the NFL.
Oh, and especially against the run.
Yeah.
And I was watching NFL Network today, and they were doing the average yards per rush for all the running backs they faced the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it's sick. I think the smallest one was 6.5 yards a carry. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
8.5 for Breece Hall, and then of course both of the Dolphins backs. By the way, I'll ask you this because maybe you have the answer. How did A-Chain become A-Chan when he got to the pros?
A-Chan, somebody asked him, and he said, "That's how you say my name." I guess no one in college asked him, which is kind of funny.
All right, shame on you, Aggie, because because I'm sitting there listening. Go, wait a minute. I mean, I've listened to every game they played. He was A-Chain, and so
now he's A-Chan. So I guess somebody asked him, and he was like, "Yeah, it's A-Chan," and so.
And now he's dead. Now he's dead anyway. So
yeah, he'll be out at least for a while. But it's crazy that people are like, "Oh thank God, Miami doesn't have their backup running back." It's like that tells you what Miami's got going for them. They got a lot going for them.
Yeah, they got that other guy, Mostert, who's probably the fastest running back in the league. He's
crazy.
Okay. He's okay.
They'll do all right.
Real quickly before we get to the rest of the schedule, and I got a couple games that I want to get your thoughts on, but I got to tell you about Dr. Linville, and hopefully Doc will be on Monday. He's been sick, and he's been busy when he wasn't sick. So we'll get him on Monday. And, guys, he does so much for you, for your lady. Best plastic surgeon in the city, in my opinion. And it's not just because he's my friend. It's because I've seen people mess up boobs, okay? And Dr. Linville doesn't do that. And they've actually got this whole October boob spectacular thing going for Halloween for your lady. So he also does, he does lipo, he does all kinds of stuff. So if you want anything done, just give him a call. And if you go to the website, hairspecialisthouston.com/getfalconhair, it may be about hair there, but you still get a free consult on anything else, and he will take care of you. Now, if you want the hair, it's time, boys. If you're getting to be at that age where you're like, oh, I don't know, let's just throw out a random 50-something guy who is single again and trying to date younger, hotter women. You know what that guy would need? Hair.
I need that.
Unless you're AJ. Because AJ can pull it off. Or Common, because I watch that commercial and I see Common say, I don't need hair. He's right. He can pull it off. I can't pull that off, right? And I guess, you know what? You probably can't pull that off either. So go see Dr. Linville. Consultation's free. All you have to do is say, hey, I heard about you on the Falconcast, or just go to hairspecialisthouston.com/getfalconhair. Your consult fee is $150, right? It's waived.
Ooh.
It's waived. You don't have to pay that $150. It's free. And you might just want to go and hang out with him and get to know him and see all the hot women who work in his office. And that's all free, which is pretty cool. And individualized plan for each and every patient. $4 a graft is the usual charge. Now I had 2,451 grafts, so you can kind of do the math on how much that would be. Right now, $3.50 per graft, and that may not sound like much, but like I'm not good at math. But get on your calculator and start seeing how much money you'll save.
It's 12.5%.
Yeah, well, there you go. And and it's funny. I've talked to a couple people who've been on the show, and it's like Jermaine just needs a little work on his beard, and we got a couple people who just need a little work on the sides of their. It's not going to be, that many grafts, but you recover fast. It's non-invasive, and it's just like the way I describe it. It's like going to the dentist and getting Novocaine, and by the time it wears off, you're fine, right? So go to hairspecialisthouston.com/getfalconhair and get it done today. All right, let's get back to the NFL. Let's go through the games here. Baltimore, Tennessee. I don't know what to make out of Tennessee. Baltimore, I mean, you nailed it last week when we talked about it. This was the perfect Mike Tomlin underdog spot. And so I wound up going that way. But I think the Ravens are going to go into Tennessee and eat some souls this week. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I tend to agree with you. I think the Ravens they had a lot of bad luck last week. The Steelers weren't good, which wasn't. I didn't expect them to be. The Steelers. I don't think the Steelers are good, but those two teams always play close games. I like that the Ravens went out early to London. The Bills went out late, and they were asleep in the first half of the game last week against Jacksonville. Like it was not. I think it's way smarter to get out there and get accustomed to it. That's what the Ravens have done this week. The Titans are leaving tomorrow, and they're going to have a walkthrough Saturday and then play on Sunday. I don't think that's the right move. But the thing that does worry me is I talk about Mike Tomlin and being like an underdog and how tough he is to beat. The other guy who's in that same conversation is Mike Vrabel. Is 25, 12, and 1 when he's catching more than 3 points in his career. 25, 12, and 1 ATS. So while I'd like to back the Ravens to bounce back here, I think they're the much better team. Vrabel as a dog is a tough thing for me to fade.
Well, you know what? And let's go back to that Bills game last week because I love the Bills going into that until I found out they were going out on Friday.
Bad call.
Especially for a Jaguars team that just had been staying out there.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, these coaches are bleeping idiots. We went to London and we wouldn't have been ready 2 days later. Our bodies weren't right.
No.
You can't, think about an athlete who's finely tuned. You can't do that. And as soon as I saw that, and I'm watching NFL Network and here's the Bills going through their Friday practice like they normally do, I'm like, shit, they're in a bad spot here. And I wound up flipping my bet to Jacksonville.
Good call.
And, it's just, I don't know why they do this, and I don't know why the Titans are doing it. I do like that the Ravens, that's just such a smart organization. Let's get out there early. Let's get acclimated. And so I do like, and you're right about Vrabel, but I do like the Ravens here. I think it's a good spot, and I think that gives them an advantage. Game I'm sort of interested is Washington at Atlanta. Desmond Ridder played the game of his life last week against the Texans, and God bless those Texans. They're out there battling.
Yeah,
but Desmond Ridder I've watched pretty much every Desmond Ridder game from college to the pros. He's never played like that in his life. He was like on point and just played brilliant football. And they wore him down and were able to run the ball late.
Which the question is, does that say more about the Texans or Desmond Ridder? Normally, this would be a time where I'd love to buy Washington. You just got embarrassed by the Bears. But this number just doesn't do that for me because I think Atlanta, like if you were to power rate these teams, we talked about Atlanta coming into the season as a potential playoff team.
Right.
No one thought Washington was a playoff team. So I think Atlanta is at least a point or two better on a neutral. So now at Atlanta, it's -2.5. That just doesn't add up to me. The spot is great for Washington. Ridder continues to be better at home than away from home.
Right.
The Falcons may have finally figured out, it seems like they finally figured out that, we used a really high draft pick on Kyle Pitts. We used a really high draft pick on Drake London.
Let's get them the ball.
We should give those guys the ball. And then the thing that worries me for Washington, they allowed 178 yards rushing to the Bears. who were using a fullback at running back in the fourth quarter. Like, that's how bad they were beat up, and they still had success running the ball. If that Bears team that was like a mass unit can run the ball on you, the Falcons are going to run it down their throats. So I worry about Washington. Like, Washington, we came into this season, and the thought was it's almost like Denver last year. The thought was they've got a really good defense. If they can get any kind of quarterback play, they're going to be dangerous. Well, it turns out Washington's defense is shit. It's not good, and it's
they're
weird.
Actually getting good quarterback play from Sam Howell.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because their defense is dreadful, and it's the same guys that they had on defense 2 years ago. So they shouldn't be awful, but they are. So, I can't back Washington here. I lean to Atlanta, even though it's a terrible spot for them.
Yeah, it's not a game I'm going to play, but Minnesota and Chicago, and this one's kind of weird because I think Chicago coming off a game where, they played really well. Justin Fields, he's been so hit or miss, but he was pretty solid. You're right. They were down to a 4-string fullback and were able to run the football. And Minnesota last year won every close game. This year they're losing every close game. There's talk of trading Kirk Cousins. I think it's an interesting spot for the Bears, actually.
Yeah, I played Minnesota at 2.5. I think this is an overreaction to the Bears. The Bears won their first game since October of last year. And now, like, our guy Fezzik, who I really respect his power ratings. I don't do my own NFL power ratings. Like, I kind of combine a couple other guys.
Yeah.
And he's one of the guys.
Why would you when Fezzik does such a great job?
Yeah, he's one of the guys I respect. But this week it was like he upgraded the Bears 2.5 points.
Ooh.
And I said, I've never seen you upgrade a team 2.5 points in my life. The Bears got a win against Washington, and now they're 2.5 points better. That's an overreaction to me. And I get Minnesota gets dinged for losing Jefferson, but they've got downfield weapons. They almost beat the Chiefs last week without Jordan Jefferson. Like, he played 2 series, and then he was gone.
They almost beat everybody, though. That's what
right.
They are. And that's what they were last year. They just pulled some of those games out.
And here's the other thing. I still think Minnesota is an average team. And Fez said on our pod last night, he says he believes Minnesota from a power rating standpoint is better this year than they were last year when they were winning all those coin flip games. And again, the Bears, Roshan Johnson didn't practice yesterday. Khalil Herbert didn't. I mean, he's done for at least a while.
Right.
So who's going to run the ball for them? I don't know. And here's what I know about Minnesota with Brian Flores as the DC. Brian Flores blitzes. He will always blitz. And the big knock on Justin Fields last year was when you blitzed him, he shit his pants. So I can't trust Justin Fields here. I think Minnesota under a field goal is good value.
Boy, I hope he's wearing dark pants this week then. But the one thing I'll also say in your defense on this is that if you actually look at Kirk Cousins' numbers, he's played well.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see it in the record, and you don't see the flash or whatever, but he has been, way above average as a quarterback this year.
And everybody's talking about Kirk Cousins being traded. Kirk Cousins has a no-trade clause. He's set to get a big fat bag at the end of this season from somebody. Like, why wouldn't he test free agency? Like, why would he? What's the point? And there were people like Scott was like, well, what about him going to the Jets? And I was like, the Jets aren't going to make him look good, and the Jets don't want him long term. Like, if he's getting traded to somewhere, he should say if I were him, I'm just putting myself in Kirk Cousins, Skechers, because that's what he's wearing at home,
or Crocs.
Yeah, but he's like, if you're in his shoes, you're in his position, you're only accepting a trade on to two kinds of teams, and it has to be both: a contender, a team that can help you this season, and a team that's willing to sign you long-term to an extension. What is that team? What team is in contention that wants to sign a quarterback to a long-term extension right now? I can't think of one. So him waiving his no-trade clause just doesn't make any sense to me.
You know what? And this will be something we could talk about when there's not games to talk about. How about Kirk Cousins to the Cowboys in the offseason?
I could see it in the offseason, but it's not going to happen in the middle of the season.
No, not now.
Not mid-season.
Let's move on. Seattle has been one of the teams that I've been in love with all year. but it sure looked like Joe Burrow started to look like Jose again.
Yeah.
This is a tough spot, noon game for Seattle. I kind of like Cincy here. I don't know how hard I'll go on it, but I think they figured it out. Jamar Chase says, I'm open, throw me the ball. He was open. They threw him the ball, and we saw the results.
I love Cincy if you can get under 3 here. This is such a cheap number because I said I won't bet the Bengals until I know Joe Burrow's back. And Joe Burrow's, I don't know if he's all the way back, but he looks pretty back. And this is what Joe Burrow does. He starts every year slow because he misses preseason with some sort of injury or illness. He's got his appendix out. He's got a calf, whatever. And then he finds his rhythm, and then they go on a tear. I think that's what's happening now. And I think Seattle is a little bit overvalued. They beat the Giants. They beat the Panthers. Both those teams are dog shit.
Yeah.
The Lions game, they won the turnover battle 3-0, got a pick 6 in that game, and won in overtime. I think that's a phony win. And then I looked at the pass rush stats because I worry about Joe Burrow against a great pass rush. And it's like, oh, Seattle got a pretty good pass rush. And then I remembered, because they played the Giants.
Right.
And the Giants have 5 guards on the offensive line. No wonder they had a good pass rush. They played the Panthers, who have probably the second worst offensive line. I think Seattle's numbers are out of whack right now. This number says that Seattle and Cincinnati are even teams. If Joe Burrow's even 90%, no one believes Seattle and Cincinnati are even teams. So as long as Joe Burrow's not out there hobbling, I think anything under 3 is a good bet on Cincinnati.
And I still think, we could talk about best receivers in the NFL. I'll take Jamar Chase over anybody. I mean, this guy is, he is a game changer.
He's a freak.
And you get him the ball, he makes things happen. All right. So,
and you can argue that, like, the Bengals, like, Joe Burrow looked good because he played Arizona, which may be the case. What I mean more is Joe Burrow was able to move around in the pocket. His timing looked right. That internal clock in his head was working. So to me, that's the stuff that made me feel confident about Joe Burrow right now.
Yeah. I didn't really care who he played. I mean, and Arizona has not been a joke, right? Gannon has turned that team into they at least fight, but he picked them apart, but he looked like Joe Burrow. And he kind of said it today. I was watching an interview with him. He's like, "Hey, we're 6 weeks in. The season's just starting."
Yeah.
And if you look back the last couple of years, we've started off slow, and we get there. And I believe him. I mean, he's just so confident and such a good player. And I think the calf injury definitely slowed him down. But last week, everybody's talking about, sit him, play somebody else. You don't want him getting hurt. It's also like guys do get healthier as the season goes on. Maybe just leave him alone and let him play.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they did. All right. This game I'm really interested in, okay, because my fantasy team, I hate fantasy questions, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So my quarterbacks are Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy. So I made a good decision last week. I don't like the spot for Brock Purdy going into Cleveland, but my God, and we both watched him at Iowa State. He was a really solid game manager quarterback.
He's fine. Yeah, he was. This is the most surprising thing ever that he's like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I never saw that coming.
Well, and Kyle Shanahan's made him into that. But what do you think about this game?
It's tough because it's starting to look like the number has gone from 7 yesterday to 8.5s, 9s now, which tells me Deshaun Watson's not playing. And it's not going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Apparently, it's P.J. Walker for Cleveland. And
former Roughneck P.J. Walker.
Yeah, as good as Cleveland's defense is, and I do think it's very good, having an XFL quarterback play against the 49ers is not going to go well for them. So I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I want to lay such a big number against what I think is an elite defense, but keep in mind, a lot of the same principles of Cleveland's defense are similar to Dallas's defense. That they cover one where it's one safety and you move your other safety into the box. And we saw what San Francisco did to Dallas's defense last week. Now, I do think Cleveland's defense is better than Dallas's, but Brock Purdy he picked apart that cover one for Dallas last week. I could see that same thing happening again. If this got to double digits, I'd consider Cleveland. As it is, I think I'm either passing or I'm using San Francisco maybe as a teaser piece and dropping them down below 3 points.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because the thing is, and as much as I love Myles Garrett, one thing that the 49ers have been able to do, and they did it to Parsons last week. Now, part of it was why was Parsons lining up against Trent Williams as often as he was? But I mean, that's kind of Garrett's position. That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
They'll find a way to take him out of the game, and somebody else is going to have to step up on that defense.
Now, the thing is, unlike Dallas, Cleveland has a ton of guys who can get after the passer. Like it's not just one guy. Like everybody on Cleveland's front is good. So I do think that's one of the bigger differences between Dallas and Cleveland is Dallas count on havoc from one man to create everything for their defense.
Yeah.
And Cleveland has a guy like that, but they've got guys up and down that line who can make things happen.
All right, so do I start Dak on Monday night or do I start Brock at the Browns?
I think I'd start Brock just because I think Dallas is in a weird spot. I saw a stat. The teams like in the last 2 years or something, teams after they play the 49ers are something like 2-19. Like it's just a nightmare. Like you have that game and you don't recover. And I think Dallas, one of the things, I guess we're kind of skipping ahead a little, but one of the things that Dallas I noticed about them was like Micah Parsons was still even yesterday bitching about a T-shirt that George Kittle's wearing.
Right.
Like
which I like the T-shirt. I'm not gonna lie.
You got to get over that game's done and gone. You should be thinking about the Chargers. Chargers are coming off a bye. They've been getting ready for this. Austin Eckler's going to play.
Right.
I think the Chargers are looking at this. Kellen Moore knows a lot about what they're doing in Dallas. So I think this is a good spot for the Chargers. They're another great teaser piece to get them over 7. I'll give you one more stat on that Monday night game. If you want to back the Chargers, which I do, I played them at 3 when it opened, but I played them again in the first half. Justin Herbert is 15-7 in the first half ATS since the start of last season. He's 11-2 ATS in the first half in primetime games in his career, 2-10-1 in the second half. So all these Charger melts that happen, like and I'm not saying it's Justin Herbert's fault, but since he's been there, that's what it's been. The Chargers play really good ball in the first half, and then they melt. So if you can get +1 on the Chargers in the first half, I think that's the bet. Like if you can't get a full 3 on the game, just saying the Chargers are going to be +1 in the first half is the way to go. That way it takes out the late game coaching from Staley, who happens to be just a total dope.
Oh my God. Yeah, he is so awful. and him and Josh McDaniels a couple of weeks ago, I can't say the word anymore because it's not PC, but the dodgeball line that Rip Torn says about so-and-so trying to fuck a doorknob. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Carolina and Miami. Listen, I'm not getting in front of that Miami train. And now Carolina could probably handle going to Miami better than most teams because that really is a different atmosphere in terms of humidity and everything else. But even without their backup running back, this Miami team is really good.
Yeah, I backed Miami last week, and they got me there laying a big number. But it feels like this team is being treated like it's one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league. And Fezzik and I disagreed on this last night. I don't believe a team that's got a below-average defense can be a top 3 team in the league. And I still think the Dolphins have these defensive flaws. And anytime you're a team that's laying 2 touchdowns, that says you're an elite team. And I just don't know if the Dolphins – they're an elite offense. There's no question.
Absolutely.
But who have they played? Like their best win is the Chargers, which was a coin flip game. They could have won. They could have lost. It could have gone either way. But then they beat the Patriots. They got smashed by the Bills. Like, I just don't know if they're as good as everybody thinks they are. Now, what they have done is beat shitty teams.
Right.
Carolina's a shitty team, but I still think the Dolphins have these defensive flaws. They play the Eagles next week. This is a game where I don't know that they need margin. As we mentioned, Achan, that the injuries are piling up. You probably want to be careful. You're not looking to go 70-20 now that you've got some injuries piling up. So I'm not rushing to play Carolina, but I'm saying be cautious if you're trying to back the Dolphins this week, laying 2 touchdowns. It's a lot for a team that I think has a major flaw still.
No, that's fair. I just don't think Carolina's good enough to take advantage of that.
You're probably right.
And so we used them in our suicide pool last week. And the reason I wanted to use them now, I still think Tua's going to get hurt. He always does.
I do too.
And we get to the second half of the season, and we haven't burned Miami. Well, now that we have, it's like, okay.
And by the way, Bryce Young, like everybody shit on the Texans for their decision last year. It's looking more and more like Carolina's the one who really blew it on this thing. Like them giving up their pick to get Bryce Young, they're the ones who are starting to look bad. And a lot of it is CJ Stroud's playing so well, so nobody's really talking about what the Texans did anymore. But Carolina doesn't have a first-round pick next year, and they don't look like they've got a quarterback. Bryce Young looks like he's a long way away from being good. So,
well, and these guys can get better, and I liked Bryce Young the best coming out. But I got to tell you, I did say something last year on the national show. It's like, I'll take Anthony Richardson over C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young right now. And that was early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think Anthony Richardson is going to be great. But I was wrong about C.J. Stroud. This kid can fucking play.
Yeah, he's good. I think the problem with what they did in trading for Bryce Young is I think next year, this coming draft class has 3 guys who are better than CJ Stroud probably. So like if you say CJ Stroud,
saying a lot, you know.
If CJ Stroud's the best of this class and Bryce Young is certainly not the best, and that's who they traded up to get, there's 3 guys, there might be 5 guys better than Bryce Young in next year's class.
Oh, easy.
So it looks like that's just a big swing and miss for Carolina, which is, I mean, that could set you back a long way. Unless you're Arizona and you just say, to hell with it, fire Josh Rosen after a year and be like, you know, this ain't going to work. But I can't see him doing that because they invested more than 1 pick in him. You know, they're married to this guy for a while.
Right, and that's a mistake. Well, Trey Lance, right? Same thing.
And the 49ers had to stick with it way longer than they would have liked because they invested so much in him.
And, you know, I mean, and I love this college quarterback class as much as I have in a long time, right? I mean, you know, Caleb Williams, obviously, everybody knows who he is. But, you know, Michael Penix, I mean, you know, North Carolina. Drake May. I mean, these guys are
Quinn Ewers, Tyler Van Dyke. Yeah, there's a lot of good ball players in this draft.
I mean, and if they land in the right spot, all of those guys could be stars. So, I'd feel bad if I were Carolina, and I wouldn't feel bad if I were the Bears. The Bears will have to make a decision, but as bad as they are,
they've got options.
They're going to have like 1 and 3 to pick.
Yeah. And what they're gonna be able to do specifically is have a new coach and probably a new GM make all those decisions, because I imagine they just say we're wiping this thing clean, and
they should.
Yeah, I think that's the best move. Start from scratch, because the Bears have nothing to build around right now.
No, and you know, I think Justin Fields. You know how I feel about Ohio State quarterbacks, which is why I didn't like Stroud. But you know, and before we, you know, move on with this, the one thing I'll say about Stroud. You know, Ohio State quarterbacks are first read guys, and that's easy because
their first read's always open. Yeah,
you got Garrett Wilson 10 yards open. You got Marvin Harrison 10 yards open.
Yeah,
and so they never learn. But there was one play last week, and only went for like 5 yards, but in like a second and a half, I saw C.J. Stroud go through 4 reads, and he dumps it off to the back. And I'm like, holy shit, that's what I need to see from you, man. And I think, and this kid, I think he's going to be really good. I don't know what the comp for him is, but I could see him being Joe Burrow. I could. He doesn't have the weapons. He doesn't have Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and that's a tough comp to make. But what I will say for CJ is he's doing all this with. I mean, Nico Collins looks like a good player. Tank Dell looks like a good player. I don't know that either one of them are like number one wide receivers in the NFL. A team
No.
But and he's doing it with no offensive line and the shittiest run game in the league. So the idea that he's having as much success as he is really impressive because right now he's set up to fail. He shouldn't be having success. He should look like Bryce Young right now. And if he did, we'd have like you'd be able to make an excuse for why. You'd say, man, and you can kind of make that for Bryce Young. They traded away what would have been his best wide receiver in the deal to get him.
By the way, what a game he had the other night.
Yeah. So Bryce Young has no weapons. He's got no offensive line. He's got no running game. But CJ Stroud, you don't have to make excuses for it because he's still playing good football.
Well, the other thing I'll say about this, Robert Woods, who was their big acquisition, has been horseshit.
Yeah.
That guy's dropped so many passes. And look, Tank, and we've talked about this. I love Tank Dell, but you have to be really careful because he's tiny.
Yep.
So you can't overuse him or you're going to get him hurt. But here's what I'm going to say as a wild card for them. I think Nico can be a WR1. I think he's developing into that, and I think they have a great relationship. The guy that by the end of the year, I think Mechie will replace Robert Woods.
That wouldn't shock me.
And you know, obviously he had the cancer, but the year before that he blew out his knee, right?
Yep.
So
he's had some bad luck.
Yeah, it takes a while to come back from all that. But when he's been out there, he looks legit. But they're pacing him and they're doing the right thing, work him in. And, I think he's got a chance to be great. All right, let's Indianapolis and Jacksonville. Man, I want to bet the Colts so much here. Jacksonville being in London for 2 weeks. And it's not because Taylor's going to be back. I think they've got a good running game with Moss, and I think they're better with Gardner Minshew. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, PFF grades Minshew 10 points better than they do Anthony Richardson. And I think from a matchup standpoint, we know what Jacksonville's good at defensively. They're good against the run. So having – and the Colts generally want to run the football. Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor, that's what they'd like to lean on. But if you don't have – if you've got a team that's taken away the run, wouldn't you rather have a quarterback who's you're comfortable going down the field with? That's Minshew. And now he gets to go into this week preparing to be the starter. It's not like he's thrown in at the last minute like he's been being thrown in. And if you go back to the first game this season, Jags won 31-21 in week 1. The Colts led by 4 points in the fourth quarter before Richardson got hurt, and the Jags put up 2 late touchdowns. I mean, this is the same Jags team that got smashed at home by the Texans. And now they're coming home from 2 weeks in London. I think this is a tough spot for the Jags, in my opinion, who I don't think are like there's people who are like, oh, they're the 8th or 10th best team in the league. I'm not certain of that. No. I don't know how good they are. So I like the Colts here. I think this is a good spot for them. I'm with you. I think Minshew is at worst an equal to Richardson and maybe a little bit better. And when he's done these little spot starts, you don't want to change the offense. Because you don't want to totally – but Steichen the reason why they have Minshew is because he's used to his system. They're just going to change it to his strengths instead of Anthony Richardson's strengths, which I don't think they wanted to do for a one-off week. Now they know Anthony Richardson's out for a while. This is going to be Gardner Minshew's team for a few weeks. I think the playbook changes. I think it's built more for Gardner Minshew, and I think they have some success taking some shots against the Jags. I think you're on the right side there.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not so much an anti-Jag thing. I just think this Colts seems a little better than people think. And listen, 6 weeks from now, Anthony Richardson may be way better than Gardner Minshew. But right now, I will take Gardner Minshew.
The concern is the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville since 2014. I mean, it's one of those.
Oh, geez, I was still married.
Yeah, they do one of those, like the Colts always win in Indy and the Jags always win in Jacksonville, but the Jags won in Indy this year, so maybe it flip-flops. I don't know.
Yeah, I also think this Colts team is a little undervalued because I think they're better coached than a lot of teams. I don't think they're as talented as they need to be yet, but they're not a bottom 5 team in the league by any
Agreed.
standard.
Agreed.
All right, Saints at Texans. I've been overvaluing the Saints all year. I'm still not completely sold on the Texans for a lot of reasons, but I do think this team is better positioned to compete than they have been for the last 3 years.
I agree. I still don't know if this should be close to a pick 'em.
Right.
As good as Stroud is, I mentioned they still don't have a running game. They are the worst running team in the NFL. And if you are one dimensional against this Saints defense, it's hard to have success. We saw it last week with Mac Jones. Like they knew the Patriots wanted to run the ball. They said, "You're not going to run the ball. We're going to make Mac Jones beat us." And Mac Jones was garbage. This week they're going to say, "We're not going to let CJ Stroud beat us. You guys would have to run the ball successfully." I don't know if the Texans can. This is of all the great things you can say about CJ Stroud, the biggest knock on him is he is the lowest graded quarterback in the league under pressure.
Yeah.
And the Saints are going to create pressure on him. I kind of like what you just said about the Colts. I don't think that the Texans are one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the league, which is what everybody thought they were coming into the season.
Right.
But I also have a hard time believing they should be a pick 'em basically with the Saints, who I think are about a league average football team. I still think the Texans are
They're not
again,
quite average yet. They're close. They're close.
there's some positive momentum building, but it's like I said last week, like the Falcons and the Saints, these are 2 teams that we were talking about coming into the season as maybe playoff teams. No one was talking about the Texans that way, but they were saying, well, the Texans could win this game. I don't know. I think maybe people got a little over their skis on the Texans. I think that they're improved, but I still don't know that they are where we want them to be before we start saying, yeah, they're a coin flip game with teams that are potential playoff teams. I don't see that yet.
And listen, I mean, Dameon Pierce is a cute story, but this goes back to something you and I used to talk about all the time. I draft a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round every year
and throw him away when you're done.
Yeah, and he's okay, but they didn't draft one this year, and I wish they had, because there were a lot of good ones to be had in the 2nd and 3rd round.
Well, remember they also have to be careful with draft picks because they gave up, they gave up their first, so that kind of changed, or they used 2 firsts, so that changes their outlook on what they can use on spinny wheels for their car, because you might need a new carburetor, you might need a new engine, so you couldn't go crazy on getting extra stuff. They still had to build this roster from almost scratch.
All right, let's blast through the rest of these because we're way over, which I'm not apologizing for because I have so much fun talking to you about this shit. It's funny. Somebody asked me the other day, it's like, would you ever go back to radio? I'm like, well, yeah, if somebody could put AJ and me together again, I'd do it in a heartbeat. So, but New England at Vegas, and I know New England's had their issues, and this is weird because it's Belichick against McDaniels. But boy, I think this Raiders team, I don't think they're very well coached, but they've got some talent. And can we talk about how Crowder deserves to get as much credit as anybody in the league on the defensive line? And we hear about Aaron Donald. We hear about, we hear about all these other guys, and we don't talk about him. This guy is doing J.J. Watt shit right now.
Yeah, Max Crosby is a problem. And I don't know that the Patriots have an answer for it. He's one of the better players in the league. He created havoc all last week, basically won him that game. This is one of the games where everything that we've known about football for the last 20 years says you back the Patriots. They're coming off back-to-back ass kickings. Belichick's not going to get embarrassed. I don't know. I'm not looking to back the Patriots here. Mac Jones, 0-10 ATS and straight up as an underdog since the start of last season. 3-13 in his career as an underdog, the least profitable quarterback that's active in the NFL. This is the time to buy the Patriots low, but I don't think I can do it.
I mean, that's what everything tells us to do, right? I'm on the other side of this. I like this Raiders team. I know it's a short week, and I got to tell you, it's like, Crosby is a disruptor on defense, and I know Belichick's usually a master at taking that away. I don't think he has that in his game right now. I don't think they have the players. I don't think he has the staff. And I love Mac Jones, but Mac Jones is a turd. I mean,
it's like Zach Wilson and Kenny Pickett had a baby. Yeah, that's is bad.
So is his hands as small as Pickett's, or
I don't think they're that small, but yeah,
Mr.
he
Tiny
got he got daddy's hands, but
Arizona at LA. This Arizona team, I've been real impressed by how competitive they've been until last week. I just think the Rams are. The Rams are underrated, man. I'm not gonna lie.
agree.
I've made a bunch of money off them this year. I'm actually thinking of this as we've been talking about. I think this might be our suicide pick this week. And it doesn't matter who they have at receiver, right? Cooper Kupp can be dead, and they find these guys we'd never heard of who turn out to be great. And that's one thing. Like when people criticize the Rams for trading all their picks for players, what they never realize, like from the 5th round on, the Rams find great players.
Yep. And the Rams' biggest weakness is their offensive line.
Yeah.
But I don't think Arizona can expose it. Arizona's 30th in pass rush win rate. They didn't even put a finger on Joe Burrow last week, and they've got no talent in the secondary, so Burrow carved him up. When Stafford's been under pressure this year, he grades 24th out of 28. When he's got a clean pocket, he grades 4th in the league. So if you can't get pressure on Matt Stafford, he's going to chew you up. And I don't think Arizona can get pressure. And then when you think about James Conner's out, Keontae Ingram he's practicing with no contact because he's got a neck injury. Their best wide receivers, Marquise Brown, he didn't practice yesterday. They got a starting safety who hasn't been practicing. This feels like a Rams or nothing spot for me.
Yeah,
and I think what you said about them being in a survivor pool, I think the Rams are a good spot this week.
Yeah, because I don't want to use the obvious teams. Because the Eagles would be an obvious one to use against New York, right? But see, this is where and you know this, we talked about this forever. This is where I'm being counterintuitive. I want those teams to lose.
Yeah.
I want the Chiefs to lose so that I can, that
knock
way.
people off.
Knock people off, yeah. So, anyway, how about speaking of Philly at New York? I think the Phillies win. I'm not going to bet this game, but I do see a scenario where the Jets could fuck with them enough to make it an interesting game and maybe get lucky.
Here's where I have a hard time imagining the Jets staying in this game. The Eagles are the best run defense in the league, which means they're going to take away Breece Hall, and then it becomes, can Zach Wilson beat the Eagles? And I just don't think he can. The Jets.
No, that's probably a hard no. Yeah.
The Jets lost Elijah Vera Tucker last week. He was their best offensive lineman. So now going up against this Eagles front that is just chewing people up, I have a hard time. Thinking of a way to back the Jets here. The Jets off or the Eagles offense hasn't quite clicked yet. So I guess playing them as a big favorite is a little scary. But I don't know how the Jets get any offense on the board because as good as Breece Hall is, I don't think he's running the ball against his front behind that offensive line. And then there's no way you can trust Zach Wilson to put points up.
No, I mean, he's played better, but that kind of game hasn't been in his DNA yet. So,
yeah.
All right. So, Detroit at Tampa is an interesting game to me. I love this Lions team.
Yeah.
I do. But, man, Baker has been way better than I expected.
Here's the thing about Baker, and this is what I've said for years when it comes to betting on or against Baker Mayfield. There's a question that you start every Baker Mayfield game with. Can you get pressure without blitzing? And if you can, you're going to beat Baker Mayfield. The Lions blitz at the second lowest rate in the league, and they get the 8th highest pressure rate. They get, and most of it's Aiden Hutchinson. He is just such a monster.
God, how sick good is he?
And the idea that Jacksonville said, we'll take the 5th best defensive player on Georgia, number 1 overall, instead of Aiden Hutchinson is wild to me. But
yeah, they're going to regret that down the road.
Yeah. But the Lions defense is strong. They don't need to blitz to get pressure. And I think the Lions, like we talk about teams that are underrated, The Lions and the Bills are the only two teams in the league, top 5 in DVOA for offense and defense.
Yeah.
If you ask 100 people, 99 will say the Dolphins are better than the Lions. Why? The Dolphins, I mentioned earlier, the Dolphins have a huge flaw. The Lions don't.
No.
They're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back. They found a star tight end in Sam Laporta. And then if you go look at Tampa's wins, they got dominated statistically by the Vikings, but they won the turnover battle 3-0. They beat the Bears, who the Bears suck, but they won the turnover battle 2-0. They played the Saints in a game where Derek Carr had no business even being on the field. He shouldn't have been playing at all that week.
No,
he didn't practice all week. It's like he showed up on Sunday morning and said, "I'll give it a go," which is crazy.
Yeah.
But guess what happened? Shockingly, they were +2 in turnovers. The Bucs have been the most turnover lucky team. I think the Lions are in a good spot to smash this team. I think the Lions are a legit good team. I think Tampa's overinflated because you look at their record and you go, "Oh, they're pretty good." I don't think Tampa's good. I think Tampa's been fortunate. I think the Lions are legit.
No, I do too, and I love this Lions team. And you know what? And there's certain things where I'm just so happy for the fan base in Detroit because they've been through so much. They finally have a good team. I love Campbell as head coach. He's my kind of guy.
Biting kneecaps. He's a kneecap biter.
I mean, I think he's dumber than a barrel of hair, but he motivates people.
What's funny is I don't think he's dumb. I think he comes across dumb, but Sean Payton wouldn't keep him around for so long if he was a dummy. You know what I mean? But he's one of these guys who, when you hear him talk, it's like, oh, that guy's a dope. But I think he's a pretty smart guy.
All right, so Giants at Buffalo. And listen, the Giants are a train wreck, and Buffalo's going to be so pissed after what happened last week. I don't like giving up big numbers, but I got to tell you, I'm probably taking the Bills here, and I'm not going to think twice about it.
Yeah, I'm going to pass this game. This is the typical spot where the Bills beat the hell out of bad football teams. That's what they typically do. But I'm worried about where they're at defensively. They lost probably 3 of their 4 best defensive players in the last 2 weeks. And I mean, the Giants, I don't know if the Giants are built to punish them because they've got 5 interior linemen playing, on their offensive line. But coming back from the London trip, jumping right into a game, this Daniel Jones, I don't know how healthy he is or not. And I think that you're starting to see with these injuries now, you're starting to see teams are trying to run a little bit on the Bills. I've heard Saquon's coming back. So that worries me a little, laying such a big number. I'm going to sit back and watch. I think the Giants are still really, really bad. And I think the Bills, even with the injuries, are they go from being a top 5 defense to a top 10 defense.
Right.
Because the Bills have so much depth on their defense. The guy that they're going to really miss is Milano.
Right.
He's hard to replace.
He's so underrated. That guy is around the ball all the time.
But on the defensive front, the Bills rotate guys more than anybody in the league. So what it means is the rotation will thin out some. You'll have Ed Oliver on the field more. You'll have AJ Epinesa on the field more. You still have good players on the field. They just have to play more snaps, which is an adjustment, but at least it's not like a drop off to a worse player. So I still think the Bills defense is going to be good. I don't know if it'll be great, but 14 points right after you go to London, it's not something I'm looking to get involved in.
No, and that's a fair concern, but I just think from a mental standpoint, they're going to want to stomp a hole in somebody.
Yeah, you're probably right.
How they played. All right. Okay, so we talked a little bit about Dallas and the Chargers. I like the Chargers there.
Remember, first half, the way to go.
Yeah, no, that's a great bet. Otherwise, hey, man, all right, we're way over. I don't really care. We had fun. And yeah, if you're listening, I love this guy. I love having these conversations because we really get into some good stuff, and I hope it's giving you some stuff for your bets. And yeah, this last shot's about to kick in, so I'm going to go home.
Well, sorry I had to start a little early or start a little late today. That's on me. I had an interview I had to record for my show, so
all good.
Appreciate
brother.
you adjusting.
I'm always going to work around you. So yeah, Anyway, so I need to tell you, but thank you, AJ. Always a pleasure. Uh,
By
yeah,
the way, Houston's own Adrian Yanez will be on Straight Out of Vegas AM tomorrow with me. So if anybody wants to, he's fighting this weekend here in Vegas.
oh shit.
And he joined me on the show. So if you want to hear him, check out Straight Out of Vegas tomorrow.
Yeah, I will. I will definitely check it out. What else you got going on?
The usual Straight Out of Vegas AM. Follow, subscribe. The Friday shows are fun because it's kind of like what we just did. We go through a bunch of games, give you some quick hitters on them. And it's 50 straight days of football. Scott's like he's like 5-0, started off to the season betting hockey. Scott is 12-0 in the postseason for baseball. Like
Wow.
he's seeing it like a freaking wizard right now. So it's been fun. Check it out. And then of course RJ Bell's Dream Preview. See what all we're doing there. We got the big pod that we did yesterday. We do a college football pod that's up there. So there's always something at those two places. And of course, pregame.com. Check it out if you want my UFC package this week. Whatever, those are the places to go.
Yeah, and I love pregame. I mean, I did stuff for them for a long time. But yes, I'm just going to give out my hockey picks for free. Last night, Montreal Toronto over 6. I think they scored 11 goals. I'm not good at math. Yeah, I was fine. But anyway, but no, man, check out AJ's stuff, and I mean, we're always gonna have fun with this shit. And thank you guys for tuning in, because AJ's the best. And it's kind of like when I go through all my wives, like who's my best ex-wife. I don't really have one anymore, but my best ex-host was AJ, and always will be. So. Anyway,
thank you, sir.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm going to tell you about Lawyer Dave. And AJ, thank you, brother. I will be out there in December. I'll see you soon.
I'll see you then, man. Talk to you next week.
Okay, so I got to tell you about Lawyer Dave. Trey says I'm drunk. No, I'm not, man. I'm on my last drink. I had 3 drinks. 2 shots. So anyway, no, I'm not drunk. I'm just I'm in that 5 to 7 range. And so, like Brandon, my friend Brandon, who does the show with me, says 5 to 7 is my best range. I'm fun. I get to 8, I'll be like, man, listen, I gotta go home and get on Pornhub and masturbate over redheaded Asian chicks. Yeah, that's that. I get to that point. No. So anyway, I gotta tell you about Lawyer Dave. Lawyer Dave is one of my favorite people on the planet, and also an incredible lawyer. Bleed Blue says sounds like 5 to 7 blows 15 to 17. No, I would say if I had to. Okay, I'm not going to say if I had to blow, because I live in the Montrose, right? I'm a single man in the Montrose. If I say I have to blow, yeah. So anyway, no, I'd probably be about 0.7. But anyway, let me talk about Lawyer Dave. Lawyer Dave. Oh, there he is. Oh, he came on. Wait. Hang on. Let's see if we got him. He's here and then he's not. Oh, he's having all these problems again. Okay. I'm just going to keep trying to add him, but I'll tell you about him in case you can't make it. But, guys, if you need a lawyer for anything, right? Lawyer Dave handles all my shit. But if you've been in an accident, and, my little brother, my youngest brother, I'm just going to keep trying with him. My youngest brother got rear-ended by an 18-wheeler. Dave took his case and got him a doctor. He's not going to pay a dime until Lawyer Dave wins. And that's the beauty about Lawyer Dave. If you guys, and listen, we live in Houston. We're going to get in an accident. And when you do, you call Lawyer Dave, 713-626-8900. And if he takes your case, you don't pay a dime until you both win. Because Lawyer Dave, like me, like us, gambler. He's gambling on you. He's gambling on himself. And yeah, he keeps trying to come in and it just keeps like disappearing. But anyway, the truth is, I mean, he's the best lawyer I know. He's one of the best friends I have. And if it's not something he will do, he will basically, tell you, hey, I'm not taking your case. But if it's something he doesn't do, he'll say, hey, go to this guy. And he'll take care of you. That's what he does. Because he loves the Blitzers. He loves the Falconcasters. We still need a name for us. Maybe the Falconers. I don't know. But anyway, give him a call, 713-626-8900. Trey says, Lawyer Dave got me checked. Took a while, but he got it settled. That's what he does. And there's nobody on the planet that I love more than Lawyer Dave, that I trust more than Lawyer Dave. So I wouldn't tell you guys this stuff if it weren't the truth. So, and I think you know me by now. We've been together for a long time. I'm not going to steer you wrong. Anyway, all right, that's going to wrap it up. Because I can't get Dave. But you know what to do. 713-626-8900. Better dial Dave. All right, so guys, I'll see you on Monday. And love you guys. You guys are so awesome. And thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Thank you so much for showing up. Until Monday, stay sportsy, Gulf Coast badasses.